Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for the segment, we have Professor Ali Munawar, CEO of Pledge Therapeutics, to discuss drug discovery and challenges in biotech and biopharma. Ali, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you.
What does Pledge do, and what were you doing beforehand in the drug discovery space?
Yes, I'll start with myself. So I spent the last 15 years building ventures at the drug discovery space. My first company was called Therapeutics. That was forged in the recession of 2008 and really changed the paradigm of how antivirals were developed. So we developed a new class of antivirals, raised over 39 million in venture capital. It exited beautifully, and then went on to work at the interface of academia and industry, translating early discoveries at Harvard Medical School, Joslin Diabetes Center into projects and products with big pharmaceutical companies. And then started to kind of think about other problems that remain unsolved, and that's what Pledge is all about. So maybe just a quick kind of intro about Pledge. It's a discovery engine that develops new medicines, new classes of medicines that's encased in an innovative business model. We are based in the greater Boston area with a footprint in Belgium, in Europe. And we specialize in solving some of the toughest problems in modern medicine that relate to proteins. So nearly every disease is caused by a protein that's misfunctioning in our body. And naturally, every drug works by hitting that protein. And our collective success in addressing all the proteins that are disease-causing is very limited, despite all the technical advances. So we've created Pledge with a pledge to accelerate the development of new classes of medicines. And we launch, we seed, and build companies from the ground up, specifically in the antiviral and immuno-oncology areas at the moment.
So let's talk about some of the challenges you referenced before. What are the challenges when it comes to the biotech and biopharma industries?
So it's a deeply innovation-dependent industry, and one of the key aspects, of course, are technical tractability, technical challenges. But with all the advances in proteomics, in robotics, and AI, and all the other things, we've been able to kind of make strides in technology, but not a lot in terms of funding. So there's been a lack of funding in the early stages of development, and we call that in our industry valley of death. And that's really not, that's restricting the development of new innovative medicines and moving them through translational research into clinical development. So that I would say funding is the major problem that's really restricting the growth of many interesting new ideas and drugs.
And how does Pledge differ from other drug companies? I understand that in terms of business models, you've opted for a more unique model.
Yeah, so we really sort of a hybrid between a venture group, a venture capital group, but also a biotech company, where we really make educated investments into disease areas that require or that are ripe for plucking or advancement. This is not a company that's born out of an academic group somewhere or licensed technology somewhere. So these are actual abstract positions that we have taken based on understanding of the science and the ability to solve those problems, and then deploying capital to really get those companies to a point where they are moving into the direction where other mainstream investor community can feel comfortable investing in.
Ali, do you think this has the potential to shape the biopharma R&D landscape?
I think definitely. So again, as I mentioned, this is technology and innovation dependent business. All of the drug development business is really kind of tied to new innovation. There's not a lot of innovation because there's very limited new classes of drugs that are making their way into development. And if we're able to succeed, and which all signs point to that we're with kind of develop the first drug for the most common viral infection in humans, BK virus, that has no treatment whatsoever. 90% of the Western Hemisphere is infected with it, and there was no treatment for it. So we were the first ones to be able to develop an oral treatment for this. And then in some of the other immune-oncology areas, which is revolutionizing cancer therapy, so we're developing small molecules there. And in this short span that we've been active, we've been able to make a significant dent already with how we're doing things more efficiently. We're attracting a new class of scientists and investors that are driven more from a mission point of view but also kind of solving some of the problems that are solvable, but have not had a concerted effort to advance them through development phases.
And finally, how does Pledge's model resonate with investors, and what are your plans for the future?
Good question. So the COVID-19 pandemic really taught lots of investors that are not historically healthcare investors that this is a stable industry. It's, biopharma and biotech is dealing with human disease. It's a perennial problem that's not going to go away. In fact, there's going to be need for more and more medicines as the average life expectancy increases, and 2/3 of the world population is going to be middle class very soon, mostly coming from some of the developing countries. And there's going to be an increased demand for new medicines, new treatments. And this is something that is not going to die out. It's not something that is dependent on a recession in the sense that many other sectors and verticals are. So there's been a significant amount of interest from investors. There was a record amount of biotech investment last year, but again, it was late stage, not a lot in the earlier stages. But we've got a lot of investors show interest in the earlier stages because the returns are astronomical. So if you invest late stage, obviously those returns are also less impressive. And then the world is actually more familiar with clinical development. But at that point, the risk really accumulates. There's not a lot of opportunity for course correction. And the results are very binary. So we believe that the real opportunity to change and develop new classes of drugs and then generate returns on investment that are really, really palatable for investors, you have to come in early. And to do that, you have to be on the ground as scientists and investors, a new breed of VC, so to speak.
All right, Ali, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
My pleasure. Thank you.